2,600 years later, certainly the forces of the collective, the interconnectedness of the collective for all kinds of reasons, certainly I think reinforces the importance of collective karma. So let me just say a few words about collective karma. So karma, well, everyone knows, or one of the fundamental laws of Buddhism is the law of cause and effect, right? That everything in the physical world, the mental world, the mind world, everything is operating according to causes and conditions. This happens because of that, that happens because of this. It is a universe that is unfolding, even though it may seem random and chaotic at times. It is unfolding according to its own laws, which quite simply means that, something doesn't arise from nothing. There already are antecedent causes, primary cause, secondary causes, tertiary causes, all kinds of causes and conditions that are really causes that are creating all the effects. From the tiniest thing to the biggest thing. Now, karma is when we take cause and effect to the personal. And while the unfolding of causes and effects in the material world is really sort of a straight kind of physical, material cause and effect relationship, human beings, because of the complexity of their minds and because they have their ability to act with their body, speech, and mind, the karma of human beings is not as simplistic as causes and conditions in the material world. Okay, because our life, our minds are conditioned. Again, by the actions, right? Not just the things that happen to us, but the actions of our body, speech, and mind. So when we talk about karma, we're talking about something that has some conscious volition to it. Is that clear, as opposed to kind of happenstance, so to speak? So we're all, and there's a lot to do and a lot of teachings in Buddhism about our karma, understanding our karma, accepting our karma, working with our karma, transforming our karma. I mean, this is really, that's what we're doing, by the way. All of us are doing. But this notion of collective karma, I think, is very interesting. Especially, I think, for many practitioners these days with what's going on in the world, because we look at the world and what's going on in the world, especially the more problematic areas of the world. And we don't identify with it, do we? We see it something outside of ourselves, and we see ourselves different than it, and we really don't want to take any responsibility for participating in it, right? It's like, I want my karma to be separate from their karma. Or else there's a lot of despair or anger or bitterness or fear about involvement in the collective karma. But I think it is an essential thing that we have to acknowledge for all of us. So just close your eyes a second and let's just take a journey, okay? So we all began, we began in utero for 9 months, and then we entered this world. And upon entering this world, we might say, in many ways, our mind was a blank slate. Now, in Buddhism, it's not quite like that. It is consciously a blank state, but we have many different kinds of seeds, positive, negative seeds, deep within our mind. But when we are born, they are not activated. But then over time, that infant us, pure, unsullied, uncontaminated, our minds, we enter the world of experience. We, primary thing we enter is our parents, you see. Now, our parents are no longer the pure beings that they were when they were children. Right? A lot of stuff has happened. A lot of life has happened. And unconsciously, they are passing this on to this pure infant. And a lot of the conditioning of the parent is not simply from their infancy and childhood. They have been in the world. They have not only been conditioned by their own very personal, more intimate connection with human beings, but their parents and the people around them have been conditioned by what? By social unfoldings, political, historical, class, caste. So human beings have picked up a lot of conditioning. And so who our parents were, who they are, is no longer just them. They are, in a certain sense, representative of a very unique coming together of all kinds of causes and conditions, which can be very specific to them, to religion, to, again, class, caste, ethnic, all kinds of stuff. They are not pure. The child is pure. One of the things the child has is they have a non-discriminatory mind. Everything, they respond to everything just as it is. They don't separate, they don't discriminate, they don't judge, they don't evaluate, they don't have labels for anything. But as the years go on, depending on the conditions in which we have lived, and the conditions that are conditioning that environment in which we live, the child begins to develop, meaning us, unconsciously or consciously, a full set of beliefs, ideas, good and bad. See, we have the power of our minds to discriminate this from that. We can learn colors, we can learn all kinds of things. People different heights, different races, But the child sees that all just as it is. It doesn't put a value judgment on anything. But society and parents and people put value judgments on everything. Right? It's sort of like we look at we look at a garden, or we look at the forest, and we look at the animals in the forest, and we see this great diversity. And that when we look in that direction, we just see diversity. But somebody else may see good, bad, wanted, unwanted, beautiful, ugly. And that does not come from the plants. That does not come from the animals. That comes from the mind of human beings putting all kinds of judgments and classifications on it. And so human beings, like us, we grow up with a very tight view of the world that has been created by our causes and conditions, but we don't know that, do we? We think this is the way it is, don't we? Now, many of us sitting here, something else has intervened along the way. We've developed self-awareness. We've developed the ability to look at our thoughts and our beliefs and those of our parents and to kind of evaluate them and judge them, right? But many people have never done that. So they are simply the product of their causes and conditions totally unconsciously. And they are acting and thinking in the actions of their body, speech, and mind, just continually to reinforce what they've been conditioned to, thinking that that's who they are, or that their ideas are valid or real. Is that clear? Again, there are some who step out of that and look at that and begin to have this capacity to evaluate and to look at things in a more objective way and to really make some real choices about how they've been programmed, so to speak, about the unfolding of their karma, especially in terms of the actions of their body, speech, and mind and where they're coming from. As well as people, because of their causing conditions, I mean, life doesn't end at childhood, so things happen. And people within them have positive seeds and negative seeds. They have positive seeds of love and understanding and compassion and patience and generosity and seeing, looking around and seeing the world with love and understanding and caring about human beings. But there are many people who, even though they have those seeds were never watered in their childhood strongly or at all, or else other seeds of hate, seeds of anger, seeds of intolerance. You see what I'm saying? These were watered in them. But it didn't end with childhood, because even as adults, conditions are watering the seeds. And so you have political forces, social forces, other things that are reinforcing people's conditioning and their seeds and bringing forth some and not others. And for many people, what's being brought forth are what we might call their negative seeds. Now, where is this going? This is going to the world. The world that we read about in the paper, the real world that we see in the news, the world that, and that's big. I mean, most of us, our life is very narrow. We forget that. Most of us, we get up, we go about our thing, we interact with a few people, and that's our life, right? Most of us are not interacting with billions. But yet, each of us, carry a lot of this social, historical conditioning, and we don't know it, do we? Now, as we begin to practice, we know that, because the whole idea behind Buddhist practice is to realize and come back to this original state, and to realize that all the conditioning, all the views, all the ideas are simply that, and they're just conditioned. And that if my conditioning had been her conditioning, if my conditioning had been his conditioning, if I had been brought up in that family, if I had had the same life situations that that person had, I am them. I could be them. I would be them. I would be the very person that I don't like or hate. Is that clear? And so when we look at the world, Buddhists approach the world in what's called non-duality. Duality is separation. It's I'm here, you're over there. This is me, that's you. This is me, that's the world. This is me, that's my childhood. You see, we exist in separation, and independence and individuality. Is that clear? But Buddhism, it's posited on non-self and interconnection and non-duality, which means the matrix in which the child and the family and society unfold happens simultaneously, not separately. It's not like I had a childhood. I was the childhood. I didn't have an existence separate from my childhood. I don't have an existence separate than this world. I don't have an existence separate from all the good things in the world and all the terrible things in the world. They're all me. And so when you see it that way, this separation and this judgment and this blaming disappears. And we're willing to take full responsibility for the unfolding, not only, this text is all about personal, but for the unfolding of the world. If we don't, what happens? We want to get rid of all the people that we don't want in the world, right? Right? This dualistic thing. This is my world, and in my world, this is how people think, this is how people treat each other. And other people who don't think this way, don't treat people that way, what? Don't belong in the world, do they? And when you end up with that kind of situation, you end up with great social distress, conflict, violence. So, where this leads to, I take full responsibility for the world as it is. I take full responsibility for all the problems of the world. They are my problems. I don't exist outside the world. And I'm also just a temporary traveler in this world. The other interesting thing about this world is, we talk about social forces, historical forces, all these conditioning forces, right? But I ask everybody, just look around you. Do you see any historical forces? Do you see any social forces? Look around, look behind you. No, we don't see anything. They're all just in our minds. And they arise in the moment in situations in life. There's the freedom. The freedom is, even though historical, social, what all that stuff is, person has brought me here, in this moment, I can look around and see there's absolutely nothing here. And I can choose, consciously choose right now how to act in the actions of my body, speech, and mind. It's like we stand here in the middle of this complex unfolding of humanity, the planet, the earth. We stand right in the middle of it. We don't separate ourselves from it, right? And the only question is, what do I do now? How can I be of help? Right? How can I live another way? How can I demonstrate in my life another way? So collective karma, whether it's, It's something very powerful these days because I think of globalization and media. We are just so, it's like the pandemic, right? I mean, there have been epidemics, pandemics, probably as long as human history, right? The only thing these days is what? The rapidity of it. It spreads so quickly because of, and maybe there could be other reasons in terms of the changes, but we are not separate. We are not purer than. All of us have dirt on our hands. All of us have co-created the mess, consciously or unconsciously, willingly or unwillingly. It doesn't matter. As long as we stand outside the mess, pointing at the mess and blaming the mess on others, right? We are just contributing more to the problem, aren't we? So we have to acknowledge our interdependence, our interbeing, our total responsibility for each other, for the world, the people in the world, those we like, those we dislike, those we agree with, those we don't agree with. And just do our best as individuals, as a community, to live another way, to be another way. And to know that we are interconnected and that individual change is social change. Because even we talk about historical forces, social forces, right, all these things, we were talking about individual. There's no such thing as a social force or an historical force or political, you know what I mean? It's all individuals. That's the transmission. It's invisible. Just like the virus, it's invisible. But when it becomes visible by testing, or when it becomes visible by symptoms, then we see it. Otherwise, we don't see it, do we? And so we don't see people's minds. We see their actions, right? We see their actions. But we don't see the mental virus that they have. And it's important that we understand it is a virus. It is a sickness. It is an illness. It is contagious. It has been transmitted, right? From mother to, from parents to children, from teachers to students, from peers to, peers, it's just been transmitted. From political leaders to followers. It's just being transmitted. And when it finds a host in which it can develop, it takes root. It's funny, this pandemic, the way people are responding is very much like, forgive me for that, it's sort of like, with the whole, ecological, there's a certain population that really takes this stuff seriously, don't they? And they what? They buy, cars, that are good mileage, and they recycle, and they do all the right things, right? Very much careful. And other people totally couldn't care less, totally ignore it, right? It's interesting to see that this pandemic is the same way. As I look around, everybody on their mask, and we're all socially distanced, we're the ones who are very careful, take it very seriously, and it's shocking to us, right? That there's so many other people who oblivious. Why is that? Why is that? Causes and conditions. It's inside them, it's what the conditions and the messages that are outside. It all mixes in a non-dualistic way. It just is. So the unfolding of the collective karma, just like the personal karma, must be embraced. That's non-duality. We must stop separating ourselves. Because we understand that as we separate ourselves, they are separating themselves. Can you see what happens? I separate myself, they separate myself. I throw things at them, they throw things at me. And the further we get away from each other, the more danger there is for the world. Right? So there has to be a way that we can bring goodness, bring sanity, bring love, bring tolerance, bring respect, bring nonviolence into the world. But in a way that, doesn't polarize the world. That's our challenge, both as individuals, as in a community, right? To look deeply, to look below the surface. Just in our lives, as individuals, we have, our lives unfold, good, bad, and most people just stumble along, right? But it's a few people who stop and look more deeply into their life, into the actions of their body, speech, and mind, and take responsibility for their actions of their body, speech, and mind, and look for another way. The situation we're dealing with now did not come out of nowhere. What causes and conditions, endlessly reinforcing for every side, everyone involved. And it's changing and permanent. Yeah, so collective karma, something I think we need to reflect on. I remember somebody once sent to me, said, the expression from the Bible, am I my brother's keeper? And it said, the Buddha's response would be, I am my brother. See, I am my brother's keeper is like, it's separation, you see. But I am my brother is non-duality. My brother and I are not separate. See, all experience unfolds non-dualistically in truth. We discriminate it. Like right now, this experiencing we're having is just happening. There's hearing, there's seeing, there may be thinking, there react, but it's all happening. It's just happening. Is that clear? And yet we'd step back and go, oh, I am listening to this, or I am hearing a Dharma talk. But that's just the thinking mind breaking up something that is not separated. This is just an experience, right? And all that's ever happening in life is experiences unfolding moment to moment. But we reify them and we think about them and we give them names and then we carry them with us or we put them out in the future. And that's how we create all this. And we don't know it. So that's why these practices about, learning to just be present, right? When walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. When looking, just look. When enjoying, just enjoy. Learning to just be present without all this conceptualization, this turning experience into a story. I mean, it's quite amazing if you think about it these days. People don't even know what real experience is, I think. People don't live in a virtual world where anything can be created. We don't even know what's real or what's not real to many people, right? What's true, what's not true. Anyhow, that's why we practice. So, there is this text, The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. It's an ancient text that comes from Indian Buddhism. It's attributed to a great Indian Buddhist teacher named Dharma Rakshata. And I know there are many of you probably on this call, and we are in a class on it, but I did want to share this with the wider Sangha. So please indulge me. It's interesting. If you're saying to yourself, oh, didn't Fred just talk about this, or didn't I just read this? But if you think about it, if you have a good friend or family member, somebody you like or love, you're very happy to see him again, aren't you? You know what I mean? Or if you have a favorite song or something, you're very happy to listen to it over and over again. Well, Dharma teaching should be like that. It should be, oh yeah, tell me, I really like that one. Do it again. I mean, we should really be like that. We could hear it over and over again. It's always, it's because we're present to it. When there's no past and no future, we're just present to it, and everything becomes meaningful and alive. So I say that for those of you who may be going, oh no, not the Wheel of Sharp Weapons again. I'm just in the beginning, and this is very deep. It's called The Wheel of Sharp Weapons by Dharma Rakshata. For those who aren't in the, you can read it. A warning. It is very wise, it is very profound, but there are traces of what we might call Old Testament Buddhism in it. Like the prophets of old, Fire, a little bit of fire and brimstone, in Dharma Rakshata, which is fine, that's who he was. We just have to accept him for who he was. So he uses peacocks as an analogy for bodhisattvas. Because he says when peacocks go through the jungle, even though there's all kinds of jungles with lots of virulent poisons, and though at the same time there may be many gardens that are quite attractive and beautiful, the peacock do not flock to the beautiful gardens. They actually prefer to eat these seeds or plants that are poisonous, and they thrive. And so he uses that to talk about what he calls heroic bodhisattvas. These human beings who are trotting the path to enlightenment, to liberation, to freedom, to bring benefit to others, the path of love and understanding. So he says, likewise, when these heroic bodhisattvas enter the world, samsara, this world of cyclic existence, though the gardens of happiness and prosperity may seem beautiful, everybody know we're talking about, those gardens where everything looks quite beautiful and happy and very attractive. the heroes will not become attached to them. So this is important. It doesn't say will not, have anything to do with them, but they won't become attached to them. For heroes thrive in the forest of suffering. This is very interesting, isn't it? For most people, I think worldly people, we think that if I could, really just spend my life in the world of happiness and prosperity, then what? Then I'd be happy. Then I'd be happy and everything wonderful. But these heroic bodhisattvas, they don't see it that way. They thrive in the forest of suffering. Now again, this could sound a little masochistic, but it's not that at all. He says, those who avidly pursue happiness and prosperity are brought to suffering due to their cowardice. That's what I'm saying. He's very fire and brimstone. Bodhisattvas who willingly embrace suffering always remain happy due to their heroism. So what is this cowardice of those who always are moving in the direction of pursuing happiness and prosperity? A coward is what? Someone who is afraid. And what are we afraid of? Yeah, we're afraid of suffering. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to be around people who suffer, do we, if we're honest? Right? We want to be around what kind of people? Happy people. And in a material world, oftentimes people who are more prosperous, have more ease, they often can be outwardly more happier than people who are struggling in the mire of poverty and difficulty and all that. So, right? So most of us, we are coward in the face of the difficulty and the suffering of life. We are afraid and we are cowards, and we run in the direction there. But he says, those who avidly pursue happiness and suffering are brought to suffering, which is really kind of funny, isn't it? What he's saying is, even though they're running away from suffering by pursuing pleasure, by pursuing a life of fun. I don't know, I think in our society we don't talk about happiness, we talk about what? Isn't fun kind of the more popular, I want to have fun. I want to have fun this weekend. We don't usually say I want to be happy this weekend, but I want to have fun. That's a fun thing to do, right? We talk about fun. So maybe if we updated it, we would talk about avidly pursue fun and prosperity. But we're brought to suffering anyhow. Our running away from suffering is bringing us to suffering. And yet bodhisattvas who don't run away from suffering and actually embrace the suffering of the world, embrace the suffering of themselves, are always happy. I mean, can you see? I mean, like this is, what a turnaround, eh? It's exactly the opposite of what we think, right? Now he says, desire is like the jungle of virulent poison. The peacock-like heroes can digest this. So this is interesting. So desire is really just shorthand for a whole complex saying that human beings are always wanting, always needing, always desirous, right? They're always, desiring happiness and prosperity. That's our modus operandi. We are never satisfied. We're always trying to make things better. We're always trying to get away from any kind of discomfort. We're always trying to get away from any kind of unpleasantness. We're trying to, you know what I'm saying? We're always trying to get away, and we're always desiring something. Now, he says here that these peacock-like heroes, the bodhisattvas, can digest this. But for the crow-like cowards, I don't know if crows would be happy to know that they are, I don't know anything about crows. I don't know, are they more cowardly than other birds? I don't know about that. What? They're very, yeah, so I don't know. But anyhow, this seems to be, maybe in those days, But for the crow-like cowards, it spells death. So this is very interesting. So it says bodhisattvas, or people on the path of our path, can be present, because again, especially for people like us who are lay people, we are in the world of desire and needs and wants and things and doing things and accumulating things. And so that's the world we're in, but the peacock-like bodhisattvas can digest this. This is the important thing. We can digest it. When you digest something, you can what? What? Yeah, we can transform it, and we chew on it, we eat it, we digest it, and if it's, we use it as food to nourish us. We can digest it. But for the crow-like cowards, it spells death. For how can the self-centered digest such poison? So again, here he's saying, so poison is strong, but poison is something that kills, right? And for human beings who really want happiness, who really want freedom, who really want meaning, a life pursuing pleasure, a life endlessly pursuing needs and wants and desires, kills, poisons this spiritual aspiration, and poisons the exact thing they want, which is this desire to be happy and free of suffering. You see, because when they encounter the world, they can't digest it and turn it into something that is nutritious and actually increases their ability to follow this path, right? The crow-like cowards, they get sidetracked. Maybe that's a better word. We get sidetracked. They get sidetracked. When they encounter the world of desire, of pleasure, and prosperity, they get sidetracked. They get ambushed. And all of a sudden they find themselves far away from the path that really leads to happiness. They can't digest it, you see. They can't digest the world with its desires, with its pleasures, because these things overwhelm them, right? It just pulls them, like a moth to a flame. It pulls them. So again, the self-centered, the person who lives in their self and their selfish needs and their desire to get away from, to get, they can't, the pleasures and the desires of the world, they can't digest, they can't use for their spiritual development. Is that clear? That's what he's saying. So this whole text is about how to do that. Therefore, peacock-like heroes must convert afflictions, which resemble a jungle of poisons, into an elixir and enter the jungle of cyclic existence. Embracing the afflictions, heroes must destroy their poison. So this is really just this wonderful, I think, vision of this Mahayana Bodhisattva path, especially for lay people. The world and the things of the world do not have to be rejected. They're not the enemy, right? But we have to be careful. We have to handle things carefully, right? We have to handle things wisely. So we're not fooled. A fool has no wisdom, right? A fool is foolhardy. They're foolish. They don't think. Right? A fool is just lost in their foolishness. But a wise person sees clearly what's in front of them. They see clearly a poison from a non-poison. Right? A child who can't read, who has no intelligence, something looks good, even though it's a bottle of, I don't know, what's poison, some kind of poison. They could drink it, couldn't they? Because they have no wisdom, they're foolish. They don't have any real intelligence. But somebody who has intelligence, when they see that bottle, will look, will read the label. If they're not sure, we'll take a little smell, right? And I think that's what's being counseled here for us. We have to be in the world. We have to use the situations, the very personal situations of our own life, but the situations of what's going on in the world. We don't turn away from the suffering of the world. And we use the suffering of the world. We use the poison of the world to transform us. When we see hatred, we respond with what? Love. Where we see intolerance, we respond with tolerance. Where we see injustice, we respond with supporting justice. You see, we're present to the suffering of the world, and we don't get caught in it. You see? If I become intolerant of others because I believe they're intolerant, then aren't I just perpetuating intolerance in the world? If I am disrespectful to those who I perceive are disrespectful, then aren't I just perpetuating disrespect in the world? If I support violence in the face of violence, then aren't I just continuing the violence of the world? So we're present to the world, we're present to ourselves, we're present to the people around us, and we're present to the poisons. But we're careful. We're peacocks. We're not those cowardly crows. The cowardly crows tries to enter the world with all its anger and all its fears and all its hopes and you'll see that good people become that. They become the mirror image of that which they're against. You see? They're not peacocks. They think, oh, I can enter the world and maintain my values, my sense of being, and yet many people, they lose it very quickly because they have those seeds already in them that then get watered, or they're not very careful, knowing that they're entering areas where there's lots of poison. But somebody who's very clear, and I think I've talked in prior weeks, there are many examples of many wonderful beings who have entered the world and have maintained their values, who've always lived from love, who's always even met their enemy with love and understanding. Again, wouldn't that be wonderful? But, just for most of us, do we live that way with the people we live with? Right. So today is Father's Day, right? I don't know. Maybe some of us don't have ideal fathers, right? How do we encounter them? Do we encounter them living in historical conditioning, historical, this or that? Are we still carrying those experiences which have all passed into the present and contaminating the present? Or are we able to, to see our fathers as product of their causes and conditions, everything we've talked about today? They're just like us, product of their causes and conditions, molded by social forces. Right? And see them as human beings like that. And can we be respectful, tolerant, loving, compassionate? Right? Can you see to our fathers, to our mothers, to our brothers, to our sisters, to the people we live with, to our children, to our... Can you see? I mean, we talk about it in a big in terms of society, but it all begins here. Social forces, positively and negative, they're all human beings. And all human beings are the same. Their bodies and minds. All human beings have the same fundamental mind. They have thoughts, feelings, perceptions. They have memory. I mean, they're just like us, right? That's all that's going on. They're no different. The only difference is they have what? Different thoughts. Different beliefs, different thoughts, different memories, which are all gone, but they think are real. This capacity to live freely in the present moment is in a certain sense, a powerful, powerful antidote to what's going on in families, individuals, society. Then he gets into self-grasping and self-cherishing, self-centeredness as the true enemy, the true cause of our poison for everyone. Are there any questions? Why don't we open this up? Can you chat them in? Yeah, and if you have any questions, chat them in, and Maria Teresa, who's on... one of the nice things about the retreat was that we had last week, and I think we had it operating last Sunday, was the screen. Selfishly, that was very nice for me. I could see everybody who was online. I'm fortunate today. I had to have about 10 members here in the hall with me today. So it's nice to see you all. You're all representative. How many people, Maria Teresa, do we have online? So we have 112 people online. Unfortunately, can't see you all. So are there any questions, either in the hall or online? Anything, how to apply this, what this means? Cece? Oh, you can. Yes, Cece.
I have a question.
Just one question. So this can be heard by everyone?
Y'all can hear me? Okay. It's just something I've been thinking about lately that I'd like you to speak on, if you could.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, Cece is wearing a mask.
I'm wearing a mask. Something I'd like you to speak on, if you could, is, there is, I don't know who the quote is by, but it's I think a civil rights figure who said, you know, none of us can be free until all of us are free.
Yeah.
And applying that to my practice, and you know, as I'm learning more about the Bodhisattva path, it like corresponds well with the Bodhisattva path.
Yes.
But right, the idea that I'm having is like, well, is it possible then to have any kind of real awakening taking any path but the Bodhisattva path, if that's true? If I'm really working for freedom for myself, when it's then it would be necessary to work for the freedom of all beings. Like I don't see any other way, I guess.
Well, that is very true from our from our totally distorted, skewed point of view of bodhisattvahood, and as that being the real purpose of life, right? To really understand oneself, right? As one truly is in one's truest self, to realize one's truest nature, that undefiled nature that we were all born with, right? That has gotten contaminated by karmic afflictions, right? Right. So we're returning to that basic wholeness. Same time, we're liberating ourselves from all our contaminations, all the things that have contaminated us, you know, all the afflictions and the cultivation of all the positive mind states. Yeah, that has to, you know, that's just a continuing process that begins with us, but it keeps, you know, I mean, what else then does one do for one's life? I mean, if one really thinks that the true meaning of life is, you know, liberation and freedom from suffering, or the realization of the inherent goodness and you know, non-selfness, then that has to leave us with a deep sense of interconnection with all beings. And if we want it for ourselves, we want it for everyone. And once you have the clues how to do it, how can you not help other people? Or are you asking me something else? I'm sorry, maybe I'm not.
Thank you. I guess my question asked a different way is, if there are enlightened beings that have walked the earth or do walk the earth, wouldn't that mean that we're already free?
I'm not sure what that means. I mean,
That if one person has found freedom, doesn't that mean that we're all free already?
we are all free already. Yes, that is absolutely true.
That's what I want you to speak.
Yeah. We are all free, but we just don't know it. I mean, the only difference between an enlightened person and an unenlightened person is essentially an enlightened person is enlightened about the nature of reality, and an unenlightened person isn't. But it's the same reality. Yeah, and Buddhism teaches we are all enlightened. We are all Buddhas from the very beginning, right? So it's not a matter of having to become anything. It's a matter of unfolding. It's a matter of unpacking. It's a matter of just, you know, again, as I tried to show in the beginning, we begin pure in this life, right? And then it all just, you know, piles on. The wonderful thing is that initial purity is still here. It's right here now. I mean, this, can you see me? Is there anything wrong with this moment? Is there anything contaminating this moment? Just look at me. Just be here. I mean, you don't have to try, you know what I mean? Just simply, just rest and be here. How is this moment? Perfect. Are you having to make a great effort to see me? Are you having to make a great effort to hear me? Are you having to make a great effort to say no? No. I mean, look how easy this is. Right? The trouble is we don't stay here, do we? Where do we go? Into my problems, into my issues, into all the things I need to do and get done, and we don't stay here. It's all here. It's all right now. So that's why the practices of present moment mindfulness and all these things are ways for us to kind of get in touch with what's right here. As it says in the Hakuin Zenji's song of Zazen, This very body is the body of Buddha. This very land is the Buddha's pure land. Right? And then the next question would be, well, why don't I see that? Well, it's because we don't see it. We see, what do we see? We see what? Impurities, because that's what our mind is full of. We're seeing impurities because we see, because the mechanism of our mind is impure, so we see impurities. Right? Just the same way, if we have dirty glasses, the world appears dirty. If we have purple-colored glasses, the world appears purple. And we're sure what? It's a purple world. Right? It certainly looks purple. We don't realize we're wearing purple glasses. So I want to take off those glasses, just see things as they really are. It's not that hard. But one has to be, willing to, turn toward meaning, turn toward purpose, make this spiritual awakening, freedom thing important to themselves. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Cece.
So we do have a question. Says, if you are a baby bodhisattva.
You are a baby?
Well, I think a new and learning bodhisattva. I think that's what it means by baby.
Okay.
And are reactive to a close person's intolerance and feeling judgmental and intolerant. Can you please walk us through what we might do in such a moment?
So if I understand you right, this is somebody who is saying they're on the bodhisattva path. This is important. It's like there has to be a context in which we encounter sentient beings, right? So we don't just let. So we have an intention. We want to be more tolerant. We want to be more respectful. We want to be more understanding of causes and conditions, right? We're walking the bodhisattva path. We've read the books. We've heard the talks, all right? And then we enter life. And we are with somebody who is what? Intolerant and judgmental. And right away, our reaction is to become intolerant of them and judgmental. Sound familiar? All right. What do we do? Well, hopefully, right? We are mindful. We have some mindfulness of what's occurring. We have some mindfulness of what path we are walking. We are mindful of our reactivity. That's probably a good start. Okay. Now, as it is said, take the sin, not the sinner. The problem is what? The problem is there is this disease. It's called intolerance. This person who is intolerant was not born intolerant. It's something they learned. It's something that was reinforced, right? And in that moment, they don't know better, right? They think whatever they're saying is the truth. I mean, that is the truth. That is what's happening, right? So here it is. And I think the question becomes, is there a skillful way that I can respond? Now, if I'm reactive, there's no skillful way. Because I'm lost in my own, they're in reactivity, and now I'm in reactivity. You can see where that's going to go. It's not going to go well. Is that true? So they're in their reactivity, just being unconsciously intolerant. And they don't even know they're intolerant. If you probably told them you're intolerant, they'd probably tell you, no, I'm not. I'm just what? I'm just a realist. Or I don't know what people say. So to me, the first thing is to be open but curious, you see? If you right away slam them back with a reactivity, with a judgment, then, all you have is a battle. All you have is closed doors. So to me, the answer is always openness. Even with people who have ideas that are horrible. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm interested. Tell me how you see it that way. Why do you see it that way? You see, you get their story, and maybe once you get their story, which is really, they're giving you the process that ends up with why they said what they said. You see, you're getting their story. Oh, and then you have an opportunity of understanding them. And then, to me, it's like, are there any places where I can begin to get them to look at their story and ask, is it really true? You see? It's only through dialogue and communication that people change. And when they tell you their story of how they develop their beliefs, you may find the places to begin to work with them. Well, I understand that's your experience, but you think that's true for everyone? All people? Right? Do you think that about it's a lot of times people who have bad ideas are not necessarily bad people. I mean, they may have some fundamental good ideas about, I don't know, freedom, equality. Who knows? They're just distorted. So I mean, basically, I would enter into dialogue with them, and I would open the door. I would try to understand them, because that would let them know, you see, that they're, somebody wants to understand them. Somebody's not going to call them a bigot. Somebody's not going to call them this. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me about how you've come to this. I'm interested. Is that clear? And you just begin to dialogue with them. And you try to get them to, then there's a possibility that they might be open to another point of view. I mean, sometimes people, there's just been some incidents in their life and they've generalized, or, underneath it, they're just angry. They're just afraid. You know what I mean? They're just, blaming. They want to blame somebody. They're not, something's wrong and they want to blame somebody. And just to gently ask, are you sure? Are you sure this is true? I mean, is it true? Are you sure? These are just very gentle, but just wonderful. It shows you're interested, aren't you? Are you sure that's always true? Are you sure that's the way it unfolded? I'd be gentle. And even if it, and sometimes I'll say to people who are like that way, I'll say, after a process, I said, are you interested in my views and how I come to them, where I'm coming from? You see? That's another way. Because a lot of times these days people are not speaking to people who have different views, you see. So you can be very gentle, or you just, But see, you've done it after you've demonstrated to them that you're interested in their views. And you might say, are you interested in perhaps, how I came to my views, or why I think the way I think? And they might have never heard that. This takes a little patience, doesn't it? In the Order of Interbeing trainings, it says, we reject intolerance. We reject fanaticism, extremism, but we are committed to compassionate dialogue to change the situation. We don't take political stances, so to speak. We're committed to compassionate dialogue. And that's what I'm trying to talk about here. Probably time. Thank you, everyone. So these are deep issues. Thank you. Let me just say one quick thing, just a postscript to the talk I just gave. These are, again, I said, these are deep issues to think about, to dialogue about, not just to jump on bandwagons, but to find our way through all this. So I trust that everyone has that capacity. And, how do I take my ideals into the real world and manifest them? It's a challenge. Thank you.